Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I was recently asked to do a video on food storage for small spaces. So I'm gonna do my best to try to cover using some of my own ideas, even though we don't have a small space. I have had to learn how to make the most of the space that I do have regardless. So I'll be covering some of my own ideas as well as ideas I have seen along the way, trying to compile them in here. But for the most part, what it really boils down to is just learning how to be creative. Look at what you have. It doesn't matter if you're in a small rented apartment or if you maybe have a big house, but you're just trying to figure out how best to store your food so that it doesn't have to be out where everybody can see it, especially if you're trying to use all your rooms for various things, such as when my boys were young, the 1,200 square foot side of the house, which is the actual living side of the house. We have 3 small bedrooms, and I was starting food storage back then, and this side here, which is the other 1,200 square feet, was all business area and could not be used for food storage. And actually, this room I'm standing in right now, the only food storage is, even though this is an 1,100 square foot room that used to be my dance and martial arts studio and now has been converted, it's still not used for our food storage. The only thing being stored in here as far as that's concerned is chicken feed. And I'll cover that in a bit because I'd already started utilizing other spaces and making the most out of it before I quit teaching dance and martial arts. Now, if you're curious about this room, would like to know more about it, because note this, a lot of you will see me standing at this counter. Some people probably think this is my kitchen. Nope. Even though this used to be my dance and martial arts studio, it has now been converted to a multi-use room. So I recommend, if you're curious, check out that video I'll link to down below. The only thing that's changed since I shot that video is we now have a ping pong table in here that our son bought for us for our family game night. Now, the first thing I wanted to talk about was, I think this is a really excellent idea for people who have a really limited space. I mean, they just have absolutely no place to put any extra food. And that is, consider going in with someone else, someone who does have space, whether it be a close friend or a family member. Obviously, you're going to want to be looking at people who think more like you. Now, understand, and before I continue in this video, I know not every scenario I bring up is going to apply to everybody watching this video. So please just be patient and listen. I'm going to try to cover as many different scenarios as I can. So not everybody has somebody else they can rely on, so this isn't going to work. But let's say in our situation, our youngest son is living in an apartment right now, and he's house hunting, and I know he doesn't want to get big into storing food where he's at. So one of the things he does is he donates food to our own food storage. And really, it's just him being generous and donating the food anyway. But it's like I told him, well, this is really great because, you know, with you helping out by building our food storage here, now you know that you've got a place to come to when you really need it. That might be a way to look at it. So do you have a family member that's kind of on the same wavelength, or maybe they're kind of close to that? Maybe they would like to get into food storage. They have the space, but they don't really know where to get started. But you do, but you need the space. So maybe what you could do is make that trade where it's like, okay, what we'll do is I'll start building up the food storage and show you where to start and how to start. If you can let me store your food there, and that way it can be something where they can share in that food when the time comes. And hopefully they'll also, if they're not already on board, they will also get on board with starting their own food storage. Or maybe they are already somebody into that and they will gladly take what you have and open the doors to you when the time comes. So that's one way. I wanted to get that out first because I thought that would be an excellent way for people who at least know someone that they could link up with in that way. One thing is, maybe you're just living in a small house but you do have an attic. Attics aren't the best place to store food because of the high heat that tends to build up in attics. So, you know, we are talking, by the way, we're not talking about foods that need to be refrigerated or frozen. We're talking about shelf-stable food. And really, I don't care what food it is, even if it's number 10 cans freeze-dried food, I don't recommend storing that in your attic. However, what you can do is you can take other items and store that up there, such as medical supplies like gauze and bandages and those kind of things that if it gets too hot in the attic, it's not going to harm it in any way or kill the nutrients or whatever. So consider things that maybe you have in storage somewhere else that might make a good food storage area. Take those things, move them into that attic space, and then start putting your food in there. So I'm going to be covering a lot of ideas like this where it might not be that these ideas will be great for food storage for you, but they might give you ideas for other storage so you can free up more room in the better places for storing food. So really what you're looking at, the best places to store food is any place that's going to stay climate controlled, especially if it's on the cooler side, and also has very little light exposure, because light and heat are two of the things that can kill the nutrients in their food. And then also if you're talking about home canned goods, if you got a lot of temperature changes going on, like extreme temperature changes, like really cold, almost freezing, to really hot, such as when I used to store canned goods, home canned goods, out in the shop and learned that was a bad idea. Even with our very moderate climate, we don't have real extreme hot weather, real extreme cold usually. It's still out there, it's not climate controlled enough, and I've lost seals on my jars simply from storing them out there. So we don't do that anymore, obviously. Now, other things I do store out there that I'm okay with, certain grains and stuff in large buckets, some of my number 10 cans of freeze-dried foods. If you're wanting to learn how to get into bulk buying and you're on a limited budget, I have a separate video just on that alone, so I'm not going to be covering that here, but I will link to that in the description box down below. So don't forget to click on either show more right down here below my channel name if you're on a computer, or down here the little gray triangle if you're on a smart device, to open up the description box to see all the links I'll be putting in there. Let's look at the bedrooms. Bedrooms can be a really great place for food storage because a lot of times most of us don't keep our bedrooms really hot anyway. I mean, most people don't. Some people might, but most people I know like a bedroom a little bit on the cooler side, and so that can make it ideal. So where are some places, even if you have tiny bedrooms, where are some great places that you can store food? Well, first of all, one of the most obvious places is going to be under your bed. If your bed doesn't sit directly on the floor, if you have any kind of underbed space at all, make the most out of that. Now ours is pretty shallow. It's only about this deep under our bed. So what I've done is I've bought those really long plastic totes that are about that shallow, and those things can hold all kinds of stuff, and they can slide under that bed, and so that they're utilizing most of that space, but you know, you don't have to try to reach all the way under there to get stuff. You just pull the box out to get to what you need and then slide it back under like a drawer. Now that's the cheap method. You can also go with looking at buying furniture that instead of your frame and all that, you basically have a set of drawers that your mattresses sit on top of. If you already have something like that and you've already got other things stored under there, again, reconsider the idea. If it's stuff that's you don't use all the time, maybe that's something you can move to an area that's not going to be as great for food storage, and then you can store your food and water and that kind of stuff under there. And then of course there's closet space. So a lot of times people don't use that shelf above at the top of the closet, or maybe they don't have a shelf. So if you don't have a shelf in your closet, consider putting a shelf in there up high where you can put things up there. So even while both my boys were still living here at home, one of the places I started expanding my food storage to was my youngest son's closet space, because he only had a few things stored up there, and then he had all this space. So I started putting my number 10 cans of Honeyville freeze-dried foods up in there when I was buying that. What you want to think about when you're putting stuff up high like that, try to consider, especially on a shelf like that, try not to go with really heavy things. Keep it lighter weight things, like the number 10 cans. That's just what they're called. They're just the big can like this, since a lot of them can have freeze-dried foods in them, they're very, very light, and they're the perfect thing to store up on the shelves like that. So I wouldn't store your water up there, but that kind of stuff, or your own homegrown and dehydrated or freeze-dried foods. So I have a lot of herbs in jars that I grow and dehydrate. Those are things that I'll be more apt to store higher up on the shelf because they are lighter weight, and then the heavier things I try to keep on the bottom. And then of course, if you have more than one bedroom and it's just two of you, you might be able to do what we did when our oldest son moved out. We were able to take his bedroom and convert it into a pantry. We got a really good deal. It just, the timing was perfect. Right about that same time, we decided to convert his old bedroom into a pantry. Our local store had a sale on Gorilla shelves for like really cheap. I think we got like half price. So we bought a bunch of them, and we actually made covered one whole wall with shelves, and then made basically a center aisle, and then we had a couple other shelves that Patrick had built for storing food and other things. And so that's where, not all, but that's where a lot of our food storage is. And then another thing that we did long before that was when we rebuilt this whole area and we put in the scissor trusses in this room to give us more headspace for dance, if we're doing lifts and things like that, or taller students doing big jumps across the room. I wanted more headspace for them, and so that when we had all that done, that continued out into our foyer, which was basically the waiting room, but it's also our laundry room. And so that made that ceiling higher out there, and Patrick was able to build me some nice tall cabinets. And as soon as we got those in, I only needed one shelf for my laundry stuff. Everything else became food storage at that point. And that's where, if you saw my one video where I was talking about milk for food storage, it's in those cabinets that I keep that boxed milk, and I do keep some of my powdered milk in there, and my cocoa powder, and various chocolate chips, and some other things. So just think about that. If it's a place where maybe you can build bigger cabinets, or you have cabinets but you don't need all the cabinet space for what those cabinets were made for, then reorganize so everything's just in, like all your laundry stuff or your toiletries and stuff are all in one area, and then you can convert the rest into food storage. Some other things that I have done, a lot of times when you have bookshelves and you got a bunch of books in those bookshelves, well, bookshelves are made usually about this deep. Well, a lot of your books are only about this deep. So one thing you can do is put jars of home canned food or store-bought canned food or whatever on that shelf behind the shorter books, and that you can utilize that space there. I've done that myself. And then another idea that I have used myself is that I have a lot of plastic totes from back when I was teaching dance class, and we were doing a lot of performances, and I made most of the costumes for these dance performances, and I ended up buying a whole bunch of these plastic totes through the years so that I could store the costumes in there. And we used to keep those all out in the shop. Patrick built me a shelf out there just for all my costumes. Well, not all of them. Some of them were out there, some of them were in the house. Well, when I stopped doing shows and then eventually retired from dance, so I didn't need all those costumes anymore, but I still have all these plastic totes. So a lot of them have been repurposed for other things. And one of the things I did do was I took 2 of those totes. This was when we converted the office into a full-blown guest bedroom. And I put some number 10 cans inside those totes. There was 2 of them. Then stacked them on top of each other and put them next to the bed, and then just put a nice looking knitted Afghan that was my grandmother's over it to just hide it and make it look nice. And now I've got an end table to put a lamp and whatever other things people want to set there when they're staying here. So that's an idea too. Consider ways that you can either make a nightstand or coffee table, make it look nice, and then you can use the inside of that as a place to store food. So like this room here, the only food we have stored in here is food for the chickens, because I don't have enough room out in their coop to store it all, and I wouldn't store it out there unless I could put it all in galvanized garbage cans like the food that I do have out there. But we do like to stock up when we go into town. So when we converted this whole room into this multi-purpose room, which is also our family game room and dining room, I took a long folding table, set it up under the TV that we put over there for gaming, and so the Xbox sits on top of that. I covered it with some buffalo print fabric and covered the whole thing, and then underneath there is where I store all the bags of feed. So I have a nice dry place to keep that, but it's also hidden from view. Now here's some ideas that I haven't done yet, but I haven't needed to yet, but if you have the kind of furniture, let's say you have a couch that's fully enclosed with fabric all the way around and it's not a hide-a-bed, especially if it's a couch you have up against a wall and you have no intentions of ever having it in the center of the room. Like we have a couch in here, it's out in the center of the room to help divide that side of the room over there, the gaming, TV, movie watching section from the rest of the room. Well, so I'm not going to do that, but if it's up against a wall or you have a way that you can access the inside of that couch without changing the look of it or have a way to cover it up. Some people have gone to cutting out the back of their couch, that fabric, and love seats, and then putting food inside there. Now, if you choose to do that, I recommend sticking with lightweight stuff in case you ever need to move that couch around a little bit. So I wouldn't put your home canned, like carrots and green beans and meats and potatoes in there. I would look at things like storing freeze-dried and dehydrated goods and even toilet paper, things that will keep that lightweight. But either way, that can make a good place to store. If you are going to put heavier things and you think, well, I'm not going to be moving it around that much or at all, then it might be, depending on how your furniture is made, you might need to have some kind of support there to hold the heavier things. So it might need to be reconstructed on the inside. You might just have to open it up, study it, and think about it, look how it's put together. I've considered doing that myself, but at this point I don't really need to. And then when I was looking around online, just trying to get some ideas to share with you, one thing I saw consistently was little Nook Spaces where people had made little narrow shelves that you can roll or slide out in some way. So think about if you've got any area in your kitchen, let's say between your refrigerator and your wall, or your refrigerator and your cabinets. Maybe that space that your refrigerator is sitting is bigger than how wide your refrigerator is. You might have room to either put or build or have somebody build for you some little skinny shelves that you can roll out. That can be a good thing for using for little smaller things, whether it be herbs or sauces, anything that you can fit in there. That would also then free up space for bigger items in other cabinets. And then another great idea I've seen a few times, and I really love this idea, and I'm thinking about asking Patrick to do this for me, is underneath your cabinets in your kitchen, there's a lot of wasted space right underneath the cabinets, because most of our cabinets don't go clear to the floor because, well, you got to have this little toe space under the cabinet. So when you're standing there, you're not having to reach out like this. That's why that goes back like that. But I've seen it where people have taken that area and actually put drawers under there. So you'd still have the toe space, but instead of it just being a solid piece of wood or whatever under there, actually turn that into drawers that you can pull out and store more stuff in. So even if that space is too shallow to store your home canned quart jars of peaches or sauce or whatever it is, you can still put other things in there that may then, as I said before, free up space for the bigger things. So again, it's a matter of just really examining everything you have. And like Patrick would say, no airspace. That's how you solve your food storage problem. So look anywhere, look in every single cabinet, closet, under every bed, any place that there might possibly be any airspace, and think about, okay, obviously I have the space filled up, but is there a way that I can reorganize this stuff here to make more space in order to store some more food or bottles of water, whatever it is you need to put up, or even your medical supplies? And then coming back to the coffee table idea, you might even be able to buy, if you like to have a coffee table out in the middle of your living room area, you might either be able to take the coffee table you have and make it in such a way that you can have food storage in there, or buy one that is made with storage. Maybe the top lifts up or whatever it is, or it's got some kind of cabinet underneath it. Look into things like that. A lot of people think of the coffee tables of holding newspapers and magazines under there. Well, instead of that, how about putting food under there? Or just fabricate your own idea that can work and double as a food storage area when it comes to something like that. And another thought that occurred to me when I was thinking about the furniture was ottomans. Some people have ottomans. Well, yeah, those might be nice, but how about making the most of that space and take that ottoman and convert it into another food storage area? And then I saw this really interesting idea, and this is only going to apply to really, really small things like packets of spices, something that can be thin and lightweight. Is I saw something where a lady took apart one of her doors in her house. Maybe it was more than one, and I don't remember which door it was, but a lot of our doors are hollow on the inside, and she took apart the door and started storing, I think it was packets of soup mix and gravy mix and things like that inside the door. And I thought, well, that's pretty creative and interesting. A lot of times we do overlook those really small areas, because we're thinking, well, you know, I've got jars this big and number 10 cans of this big, and then I've got big bags of grain. I don't have space for something like that in these small spaces. Well, if it's a matter of just reorganizing your stuff, putting smaller things that you don't use very much, that you don't want to throw out, you know, maybe it's all those extra pairs of socks you're stocking up on and you don't really need them right now because you have enough good pairs of socks and you're just saving those for your future, then those are a nice lightweight thing that can handle any kind of climate, any kind of temperature changes. Those are things that you can store in those areas where the food might not be a good place to store, but you can put those there, so that then you can take that food and store it wherever it was you were storing your socks. That might have been a better place for food. So again, walk through your whole place, not just inside your house, but outside your house. Is there any places that you have, maybe you can build or put in some kind of root cellar outside? If if maybe you have a small house, but you have enough property, you can do something like that. Maybe there's places in your garage, if you have one, that you can look at as long as it stays temperature controlled, or that you can again switch around what you've got in your more climate controlled areas, move that stuff out to the shop to free up space inside the house. And then one final idea that I had that I say for last, only because I don't think it's going to be the best idea for most people, but it might be a good temporary idea, at least to get you started until you can find more space somewhere else, and that is possibly getting mini storage. If you really don't have any room at home and you're really feeling that need to put up 1, 2, 3 years worth of food, it might be a good idea to go ahead and rent a mini storage while you try to plan out either getting yourself into a bigger place, or buying another piece of property, and even getting yourself a shipping container. These can be really good places for storing food and other things that you want, that you don't need to access all the time, that's something you're storing for a long term. And then if you look around close to you, you might even be able to find smaller storage containers that aren't that huge. Like even a 10-footer can give you tons of space for food storage. That will be something that will be easier to, because it's smaller, it might be easier to locate, more affordable to buy, and also easier to transport from one place to another. That might be something that can take a while to attain, so maybe mini storage can be just a place to start. I would say start with the smallest possible one you can get if you have to go that way, and then maybe by the time your food storage gets to the point you think you might be overflowing that smaller space, hopefully by then you might have another solution. You've either found more spaces in your own place, or you've moved to a place where you have more space, or you found somebody else that you can go in with, a family member or a close friend, where you can help build their food storage to ensure yourself a place there. All right, well, I hope you found this helpful. I'm sure there's a ton more other ideas, and so what I'm hoping is that other people out there, I know there's one lady that's been following me for a little while that lives in an apartment, and she's really been cracking down for this past year and really putting up the food. And I'm pretty certain she's probably come up with some pretty good ideas in the past year that she could share down below. And anyone else that's been doing this for a while. And even if you do have a big place, it's still likely you have some really good ideas for storage that maybe some of us aren't thinking of. And here's another thing I wanted to say before I forget. Go to places like Pinterest or just do a search online for storage ideas. It doesn't specifically have to be food storage ideas. Just look up storage ideas for small spaces and you will find a whole bunch of some of them are really cute ideas or just different ideas. And they can be, just like I said before, things where it's like, well, that won't work for food storage, but if I can free up this cabinet space by taking all these things and putting them in this great little idea right here, now I've got another whole cabinet just for food. So it really comes down to, in a lot of this, just thinking outside the box. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to check out the comments down below as well as the links in the description box. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.